नमस्कार फ्रेंड्स, गुड मॉर्निंग टू ऑल। आप सबका फिर से पुनः एक बार फिर से स्वागत है। मैं डॉक्टर संदीप जोत, मेरे साथ डॉक्टर एस रंजन आपका स्वागत करते हैं स्पिरिचुअल डॉक्टर फॉर होलिस्टिक हेल्थ के ऊपर। डॉक्टर रंजन।
डियर फ्रेंड्स, हम ढूंढते रहते हैं आपके लिए अच्छे एक्सपर्ट, अच्छे स्पीकर। और आज हमारे साथ एक काफ़ी अनुभवी, काफ़ी सीनियर डॉक्टर नेफ्रोलॉजिस्ट जुड़ रहे हैं। स्वामी राम की पुस्तक हिमालयन संतोष संग निवास, लिविंग विद हिमालयन मास्टर, मैंने कई साल पहले पढ़ी थी। इस साल मैंने उसे फिर से पढ़ी और हमारे प्लेटफॉर्म पर ही दिल्ली के ऑर्थोपेडिक सर्जन डॉक्टर पी के अग्रवाल आए थे। वो भी स्वामी राम को चाहने वाले हैं। आप में से अगर किसी ने स्वामी राम को पढ़ा हो, यहाँ पर मैं देख रहा हूँ काफ़ी लोग जुड़े हैं जिन्होंने पढ़ा है। तो स्वामी राम भारत संतों का, योगियों का देश है। और भारत में जो संत हुए, योगी हुए, उनमें स्वामी राम का नाम बहुत प्रमुखता से आता है। तो डॉक्टर पी के अग्रवाल सर जो आए थे, उन्होंने ही हमारा संपर्क कराया डॉक्टर प्रकाश सर से, जो स्वामी राम के साथ कई साल साथ रह कर किए हैं। और स्वामी राम जब यूएस गए थे, स्वामी राम के लाइफ पर इंटरेस्टिंग एक्सपेरिमेंट है। ऑटोनॉमिक नर्वस सिस्टम पर क्वाइट सिग्निफिकेंट कंट्रोल मिनेसोटा क्लिनिक में उन पर हुआ था 60s में। दोनों हाथ के टेम्परेचर को अलग अलग कर पाना, अपने हार्ट रेट को कॉन्शियसली अल्टर कर सकना, डीप थीटा स्टेट में जिसमें कॉन्शियस रहना पॉसिबल नहीं है, उसमें कॉन्शियस रहना। ऐसे कुछ एक्सपेरिमेंट उनके लाइफ पे हुए थे। आज डॉक्टर प्रकाश सर से शायद हम वो भी सुन सकते हैं। तो उन्हीं दिनों में डॉक्टर प्रकाश यूएस में थे और वहाँ पर स्वामी राम से मिले। और 1998 में वो इंडिया आए और स्वामी राम के का जो मिशन है, जो हॉस्पिटल है, उसमें इन्होंने अपना लाइफ डेडिकेट किया है। सेवा बहुत बड़ी बात होती है, अपना जीवन सेवा को समर्पित करना। और ऐसे हमारे साथ समाज सेवी डॉक्टर जुड़ रहे हैं, ये स्पिरिचुअल डॉक्टर्स फॉर होलिस्टिक हेल्थ के लिए बहुत बड़ी बात है। तो डॉक्टर प्रकाश से हम स्वामी राम के द्वारा दिए गए आध्यात्मिक टीचिंग, स्पिरिचुअल टीचिंग्स, और खासकर उनका उपयोग हमारे हेल्थ पर्पस से, होलिस्टिक हेल्थ पर भी स्वामी राम की पुस्तक है, वो मुझे अभी पढ़नी है। अभी मैंने वो नहीं पढ़ी है, मैंने सिर्फ लिविंग विद हिमालयन मास्टर अभी पढ़ा है। तो होलिस्टिक हेल्थ, हम सभी हेल्दी रहना चाहते हैं और स्पिरिचुअलिटी के को जितना हम अच्छे से समझ लें, हेल्दी होना उतना मुश्किल नहीं रह जाता जितना मुश्किल समझते हैं। समझने की और उसको आत्मसात करने की ज़रूरत है। तो आज हमारे साथ डॉक्टर प्रकाश जुड़ रहे हैं। पर्पस ऑफ लाइफ, with the intention to understand purpose of life, integrating body, breath, mind and spirit, शरीर, मन, बुद्धि, श्वास, आत्मा, इन सभी को इंटीग्रेट कैसे हम करें, इस टॉपिक पर डॉक्टर प्रकाश सर का व्याख्यान होगा आज। डॉक्टर संदीप।
फ्रेंड्स, हर संडे हम आपसे एक ऐसे जेम से मिलाते हैं जो अपने आप में एक अद्भुत होते हैं, एक यूनिक होते हैं। और आज जिन डॉक्टर्स को हम मिलाना जा रहे हैं, डॉक्टर प्रकाश को, उनके बारे में मैंने जितना पढ़ा है, जाना है, तो वो अपने आप में एक इंस्पिरेशन है। जब हमने 1 साल पहले लगभग ये चैनल स्टार्ट किया था, डॉक्टर्स के द्वारा डॉक्टर्स के लिए और समाज की सेवा के लिए, और गिविंग सम न्यू डायरेक्शन टू द हेल्थ एंड हेल्थ पर्सपेक्टिव, तो उस समय हमने ये सोचा नहीं था ये जो प्रोग्राम है वो इतना लंबा चलेगा, इस तरह से इतने लोग जुड़ेंगे। और ये जैसे बोलते हैं, कुछ लोग जुड़ते गए, कारवा बनता गया। तो इस तरह से हर हफ्ते हमारे लिए एक सत्संग होता है, जिसको बोलते हैं सत्संग। होता क्या है? सत्संग होता है अच्छे लोगों के संग बैठना, अच्छे लोगों की बातों को सुनना। ऐसे ही हमारे साथ जो दर्शक जुड़े रहते हैं, वो हमेशा इतना प्यार देते हैं, उनके जो कमेंट्स आते हैं, उनके जो रिव्यूज आते हैं, देर हार्ट वार्मिंग। इस तरह से आप जुड़े रहिए, अपने और साथियों को जोड़िए। हमारा पर्पस सिर्फ यही था, सिर्फ जो एलोपैथी मेडिसिन है, होम्योपैथी मेडिसिन या कोई भी पैथी मेडिसिन है, वो अपने आप में इनकम्प्लीट है जब तक ह्यूमन टच उसमें नहीं है, जब उसमें एक श्रद्धा भावना नहीं है, जब उसमें कमिटमेंट नहीं है, या और चीजें जो ह्यूमन की जो एनर्जीज है वो एक्सचेंज नहीं होती हैं। तो इसी बातों को लेके, जैसे एक यूनिलेटरल थिंग थी जो मेडिसिन में चल रही थी, ओनली मेडिसिन विल वर्क एंड प्रोसीजर विल वर्क, that there are other perspective to the health also, there are other perspective to the life also, there are other thing that doctors are doing। तो लोगों को ये था डॉक्टर का मतलब क्या होता है मेडिसिन, डॉक्टर का मतलब क्या होता है सर्जरी, डॉक्टर का मतलब क्या होता है ठीक है उसको एडमिट कर लो, डॉक्टर का मतलब क्या होता है एक बड़ा सा आईसीयू है, इस तरह से। लेकिन हम आपके सामने पिछले लगभग एक साल में 47 डॉक्टर्स को लेके आए हैं, जो अपने आप में इंस्पिरेशन है, जो सारे जो हमारे वीडियोस है हमारे यूट्यूब चैनल के ऊपर और फेसबुक के ऊपर अवेलेबल है, आप उनको देखिए। एक एक लेक्चर जो है अपने आप में ट्रांसफॉर्मेटिव है। तो आज का जो बातचीत होगी, मैं चाहूंगा आप सभी लोग एक कॉपी पेन पास में लेके रखें। कैसे हम अपने स्वास्थ्य को, कैसे अपने शरीर को, कैसे अपने मन को, कैसे बुद्धि को हम जोड़ सकते हैं और अलाइन कर सकते हैं। और सबसे बड़ी बात, लाइफ का पर्पस क्या होना चाहिए, टू फाइंड द पर्पस ऑफ लाइफ। आपको अगर लाइफ का पर्पस मिल गया है, जैसे डॉक्टर प्रकाश को मिल गया है, तो आपने लाइफ के एक रास्ते को ढूंढ लिया है। टाइम इज 11:11, सो राइट नाउ आई वांट टू इनवाइट आवर गेस्ट स्पीकर डॉक्टर प्रकाश। तो मैं उनको चाहूंगा वो अपना वीडियो ऑन करें और हमारे दर्शकों को अपने बारे में, अपनी जर्नी के बारे में, अपने गुरु के बारे में, और इंटेग्रेटिंग ब्रेथ, बॉडी एंड स्पिरिट, उसके बारे में हम सबको सर बताएं। डॉक्टर प्रकाश, आपका बहुत 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 स्वागत है स्पिरिचुअल डॉक्टर फॉर होलिस्टिक हेल्थ। वी आर रियली ऑनर्ड दैट यू हैव कम हियर to share your views and experiences with us.
Thank you very much for a very kind introduction. आप मुझे क्षमा कीजिए कि मैं अंग्रेजी में ज़्यादा फ्लुएंट हूँ।
That's totally fine, sir. It's absolutely
मैं
fine.
भी उत्तराखंड में
Mixed audience.
23 ईयर से मैं हूँ, लेकिन अभी फंक्शनल लिटरेसी है हिंदी में, लेकिन बोलने में थोड़ा मुश्किल होता है, तो मैं अंग्रेजी में बोलूँगा। आई होप इट इज़ ओके।
Sir, whatever comes from the heart, you can use any language.
ओके, ठीक।
I understand.
I'm very thankful for the invitation from all of you and from Dr. Agarwal. Swami Rama was a tremendous inspiration for me. And it's because of Swami Rama that I'm now in Dehradun in Uttarakhand. So I'd like to start. Can I go ahead and share the screen?
Yes.
Share your personal experience. What made you to devote your life for the mission of Swami Rama? Some personal experiences.
I was a student, 24-year-old student at the University of Minnesota in the US. And one day I was walking through the campus and I saw a poster that said that a monk from the Himalayas will be giving a lecture at the student building, student union. So I made sure that I did not miss the lecture, and I sat in the front row listening to Swami Rama. But that lecture for me was not inspiring because Swami Rama was talking about things that I had no interest or even belief in, like Parkaya Pravesh, how a yogi can drop one body and enter another body. Being a scientist by background, I thought this is all very strange, very bizarre. So I left the room not very impressed. But Swami Rama was very kind, and he gave me 3 more chances to meet him during the course of 1 year. And somehow my arrogance, my skepticism, my non-belief in all this prevented me from accepting his gracious opportunities. Finally, one day, I got a call from my yoga teacher at the university, who was a professor of Sanskrit, who was later a Swami Vedabharati. He told me that Swami Rama has a very important parcel to be delivered to his hotel room. Please take care of it for me. Though it was a Sunday early morning and I wanted to sleep late on Sundays, I somehow felt I could not say no to my teacher. So I picked up the parcel, and I went to Swami Rama's room in the Holiday Inn in downtown Minneapolis. There were some other students in the room. He sent them all away. So I was alone in the room. And the first thing he said to me was, "I've been waiting for you for a long time." And I said, "No." As soon as I got the phone call, I had my shower, I changed my clothes, and I picked up the parcel. He shook his head and he smiled at me. Then it struck me, he's not talking about this morning. He's talking about some other time frame. Then he took me into the bedroom. It was a suite. He made me sit on the bed next to him. And for half an hour, he talked to me extremely lovingly. Even now, I can't remember the exact conversation, but the love he projected melted my heart completely. He entered my heart, my soul, my mind. And I realized that I was in the presence of a very great, unique personality. And over a period of 1 year, I took Diksha from him. I was accepted as a student and then as a disciple. And in 1998, the last year of his life in the US, I had come to meet him at the Jolly Grant Hospital. He called me one day and said, "Your children have grown up. They can manage without you. I want you to be a part of my hospital mission." He gave me some time to wind up my affairs. I was vice president of Baxter Healthcare in the US in Chicago. I resigned my job. I had a beautiful home near a lake in the western suburb of Plymouth in Minnesota. I sold the house. I said, "I'll burn all the bridges. So even if I get frustrated, I will not go back." My relatives were taking bets. He will last in India for 6 months. Some said, no, maybe 1 year. The longest anyone gave me was 2 years. I've now been here for 23 years. Never looked back. It's been a very fulfilling journey for me to serve Swami Rama's mission at the Himalayan hospital. I'm not a nephrologist. I'm a biomedical scientist working in the field of kidney disease and dialysis. And so not a clinician, but a scientist. So if you'll permit me, I'll start my presentation because I know I have to keep it within 15 minutes or so. So
Please.
may I go ahead and share the screen? Is it visible?
Yes, sir.
Okay. So I'm going to talk about integrating of body, breath, mind, and spirit in order to achieve the purpose of life. Everything that I've learned from Swami Rama. So I pay my homage to him, and Swami Rama was my guru, my mentor, my friend, my support. He was a yogi par excellence, my spiritual mentor, a great humanitarian, a builder of institutions, both in India and abroad. He was a teacher. He is an author of over 45 books. He never slept at night. He stayed awake all night. His only sleep was 2 to 2.5 hours a day after lunch. And most of the night was spent checking on his students, writing books through dictating to secretaries who were kept awake. In fact, he would give dictation of one book to one secretary and then go on to the next book with another secretary while they went to type what he had dictated. So this way he compiled over 45 books. And the amazing thing about these books is that he has made very profound subjects very easy to understand, very practical, very simple. He was an artist, a painter, a poet, a musician. He lived in the same building as Amjad Ali Khan, and they would often get together and have music sessions. And Amjad Ali Khan also came to Swami Rama's ashram in Pennsylvania and gave us all a beautiful concert. I think you've already talked about Swami Rama's yogic expertise. These were experiments he did at a well-known foundation in the US called the Menninger Foundation. They had put thermistors on the thenar and hypothenar region of the palm, and he created a difference of about 10 degrees. And then he reversed it. He made the warm part cool and the cool part warm to show that it was not a fluke and that it was within his control. He then said, I'll stop my heart. They expected that his heartbeat would start slowing down. Instead, it kept speeding up and reached over 300 beats a minute. And he went into atrial fibrillation, where blood is not being pumped. So when he said, I'll stop my heart, he meant I'll stop it from pumping blood. He had said that normally you need to do a lot of preparation of fasting and so on. But as you're very interested in seeing this demonstration, I will do it for you for about 1 minute, but not longer, because I have not prepared myself. But after 17 seconds, the control room said, yes, yes, we are convinced, please stop. They were afraid that they didn't want a dead yogi on their hands. As Dr. Green, the main investigator, was not a cardiologist, he took the recordings to a colleague in cardiology and said, what do you make of this? He said, it's called atrial flutter. Those are the words that Swami Rama had said, my heart is fluttering. And he said, did this patient survive? And Dr. Green said, well, we removed the electrodes, and he went and gave a lecture that same afternoon. So these were the things that Swami Rama showed under controlled conditions, that yoga gives you access to parts of the mind that are normally not within your control. Swami Rama also then gave a demonstration of yoga nidra. He could change his brain waves according to what they required. If they said alpha waves, he created alpha waves. If they said beta, he created beta. So for deep sleep, you go into a delta wave state. So about 75-80% of the time, he was producing delta waves for 20 minutes. And then when he came out of that yoga nidra state, he repeated all the conversation that took place in the room, word for word. And he said, part of my brain was asleep, and part of it was conscious listening to what you all were saying. So he gave these kind of demonstrations. Many of these were written up in scientific journals. It was in the Britannia Yearbook of Science, Encyclopedia Britannica. So these were all well-validated experimental findings that he was able to demonstrate. Our great teacher Gautam Buddha spoke of 4 truths. There is suffering, there's a cause for suffering, the cause can be identified and removed, and there's a state that is free of suffering. So these are called the 4 noble truths. So the Buddha admitted that yes, human condition is prone to suffering, but he said that you can introspect and find out why you're suffering, and then you can try to remove that cause and reach a state free of suffering. So happiness is really our birthright. We have bounty of the nature outside of us. We have the source of peace and bliss within us. And yet, we are not happy. Why is this? Let me give you a simple analogy. A school teacher, after many years of service, retired from his duties, and his students gifted him with a beautiful watch as a retirement gift. One day on a walk, he had not clasped it firmly on his wrist, and the watch fell off his wrist. So as it was beginning to get dark, sun was setting. So he was on his hands and knees looking for the watch. He retraced his path and was looking. A student came along and said, Sir, what are you doing? Why are you on your hands and knees? He explained that this is what happened. I'm looking for my watch. So the student said, Sir, where were you walking when you could have lost your watch? He pointed to the other side of the street, and said, I was walking along that side of the street. So then why are you looking over here? He said, the good street light over here. I can see very clearly here. The other side of the street is very dark. I cannot see very clearly over there. Now to us, this seems like a dumb statement. He lost his watch on the other side of the street, and he's looking here because the street lights are clear. But this is what we all do. The street lights of worldly pleasures is where we spend all our time searching for peace of mind. Whereas we lost our peace of mind on the other side, within us. So having lost our peace of mind on one side of the street within us, we look on the other side of the street, in the outer world. We cannot get this kind of happiness in the outside world because everything in the world is subject to death, change, death, and decay. Wealth, position, power, all of these. So we need to create a sound philosophy of life where we do not pin our hopes on these transient things like wealth and power and position. And we need to create a sound philosophy of life and live according to that philosophy of life. Some quotations from Swami Rama. The time has come for man to realize that he is not merely a body, he's a breathing being. He is made up of a thinking being, made up of complex emotions, appetites. Now, I'm not able to see all of my slide. I think, to do that, do I get rid of the participant? Then will I be able to see most of my slide? Okay, I can move it. Fine. A very important statement that Swami Rama has made is that all of the body is in the mind. All of the mind is not in the body. Because all of the body is in the mind, through mind control, he could control his body temperature, heart rate, delta waves. If you look at a physiology textbook, you'll see something called a homunculus, where it shows what areas of the brain control what parts of the body, what part of the brain controls the heart, what part is involved in respiration, where is a cough reflex in the brain. So the entire mapping of the body is in the brain. But more important than the brain is the mind. And that is where our entire body control can be accessed. And so the project that Swami Rama worked on in Kansas, USA, was called the voluntary control of involuntary systems. And that is what he showed, that because of his yogic discipline, he had the ability to control things which are not normally under our voluntary control. So we have to take an integrated approach. More important than physical health is mental health. And more important than mental health is our spiritual health. If we just identify with the physical body, we will have obstacles. But we can change the way we think, the way we breathe, and also our lifestyle in the world, and bring our thoughts, emotions, and feelings into the conscious realm through self-analysis and self-examination. But for this, we need discipline and willpower, which is very difficult these days with all the distractions of everyday life. Actually, we think we have only one body, but there are actually 5 koshas or sheaths. There is a physical body called Annamaya kosha, made up of the food we eat. Underlying that is the Pranamaya kosha, the energy body. Underlying that is the Manomaya kosha. Then the sheath of intellect, the Vijnanamaya kosha. The innermost kosha is Anandamaya kosha, the kosha of bliss, which we experience every day in deep, dreamless sleep. But at the center of all of this, making all of this intelligent and conscious, is Atma, the center of consciousness. So when we only focus on our body, we are forgetting that really the intelligence is over here. And anything that is coming outwards radially through these koshas is because of the center of consciousness. Anything that happens in the physical body has already happened at the pranic level. There's a pranic disturbance, which many weeks or months later will show up as symptoms in an organ system of the body. Any pranic disturbance can be traced to a disturbance of the mind, some mental trauma, some stress. So it's very important for us to go to the root causes. So at least Annamaya Kosha, Pranamaya Kosha, and Manomaya Kosha should be examined to trace the source of our problems. Swami Rama gave us a nice model. We have a body and we have a mind. And connecting body and mind is a breath. The in-breath and out-breath are the two guards guarding the palace of life. In most Indian languages, we don't say somebody died. We say that the prana left the body, because there's a break in this connection between body and mind. When this connection is broken, we call that death. Now the body cannot survive because prana is no longer keeping the vitality of the body. Then the mind and soul in subtle form, sukshma sharira, go to other realms, and then our desires bring us back again and again, and we get new bodies to fulfill unfulfilled desires. So body, breath, and mind are very closely related, and anything that happens in the mind is reflected in the breath and in the body. For example, let's say you're very angry. When you're very angry, if you examine your breath, you'll find that the breath is jerky and disturbed. If you're depressed, if you observe your breathing, you'll find that the breathing is shallow and your exhalation is very long in comparison to inhalation. When you get a sudden piece of shocking news, you'll find that you take a sharp in-breath. So Swami Rama would say the breath is a barometer of the mind. Our mental states, our emotions are reflected in the breath. And what happens? The breath is only a vehicle. The breath is a vehicle for prana. In a barat, the bridegroom enters a bride's home riding a horse. But when the bridegroom reaches the bride's place, they do not garland the horse, they garland the bridegroom. So the breath is only the horse, Ashva. The true, it's only a vehicle. What is really entering the body through the breath is prana, which keeps the body vital and energized. When Swami Rama said this 50 years ago, that 70 to 80% of diseases are psychosomatic, most of the Western doctors could not believe it. Now, there's more clear thinking that stress leads to distress, and distress leads to disease, dis-ease or disease. Because stress reduces our immunity. Even now with the COVID, we find that some people, though they're COVID positive, they have no symptoms. And there are others who have a lot of symptoms and end up in the ICU. So it is all related to our immune system. And what reduces immunity? Negative thinking, turbulent emotions. These are the things that are injurious to our immune system. Whereas positive emotions like love, compassion, they reduce stress and distress and promote healing. So happiness really comes from within us. It's more a question of attitude than aptitude. There are two systems in the body, cleansing the body and nourishing the body. For cleansing the body, we have the lungs, we have the pores, we have the kidneys and the bowels. Breath is a source of life, getting rid of carbon dioxide and bringing oxygen or the prana of oxygen into the body to control the heart, digestion, metabolism, and so on. The pores are another way of eliminating toxins. So excessive use of deodorants and chemicals will close off this excretion through the pores. Kidneys get rid of urea, creatinine, uric acid, phosphate, and many of the metabolic wastes, resulting also in electrolyte and acid-base imbalance. So for keeping the kidneys healthy, you have to drink a lot of water, nice fresh water, even coconut water, fruit juices, whey. What is whey? If you boil milk and add some lemon juice to the milk, it breaks up. You can make, from the solids, you can make paneer. And the liquid is called whey, and it's a very good diuretic. You don't need Lasix. You can take whey and get the same effects in a non-chemical way. In the Western world, you'd be surprised. I lived for the 30 years in the US, and I was amazed to see that most Americans don't evacuate the bowels every day. They probably have bowel movements once or twice a week. Constipation is a big problem, and there are a lot of medications related to softening the stool and evacuating the bowels. Very easy. There are Ayurvedic things like Triphala, lemon juice and warm water with salt and honey. All of these can make you be regular in getting rid of the wastes in the digestive system. So it's very important to keep the lungs, pores, kidneys, and bowels healthy for cleansing the body. This is an exercise one can do in the morning rather than relying on bed tea. You can have the lemon juice and honey and then do a simple exercise that opens up some valves in the small intestine by bringing the knee to the floor and applying pressure on both sides, and that will give you evacuation in minutes. How about nourishing the body? See, a balanced diet, neither overeating nor undereating. As the Bhagavad Gita says, yoga is not for one who overeats or does not eat or fasts too much. It's not for one who does not sleep at all or sleeps too much. So the moderation, the middle path of the Buddha. Do not become a victim of taste. Don't consume a lot of junk foods because they're very tasty. Avoid excess salt, sugar, fried foods. Take a lot of healthy vegetables, grains, legumes, dairy products. Let your diet have both solid and liquid, cleansing and nourishing foods, cooked as well as raw foods like salads. About 40% of the meal should be whole grain like wheat and rice. About 20% should be dals, beans, 20% vegetables, fruit, and then only 5% would be high protein dairy products. Or in a non-vegetarian diet, it would be the non-vegetarian part of the high protein diet. Swami Rama never got into any controversies of vegetarianism and non-vegetarianism. He said each one has their unique lifestyle, unique upbringing. But he did say that for a meditator, a vegetarian diet is helpful. It improves your bowel movements, less constipation. It reduces blood pressure and heart disease. In vegetarian, you have very little colon cancer because of the roughage in the diet, improved longevity, and reduced senility and Alzheimer's disease. There's a lot of Alzheimer's disease now in the Western world. In ancient texts, they always talked about wise old man, whereas nowadays the books say foolish old man, because we have become foolish through our senility and dementia. Now we come to exercise. Yogasanas can be done to stretch the muscles, improve muscle tone, massage the glands, and improve the hormonal secretions, to release tension, and to make for a healthy body. The asana being shown here is called Dhanurasana, and it's very good for your digestion. It's also very good for your knees and for your pelvis. But when you do asanas, it should be with empty stomach and bowel. It should be done slowly, gently, with breath awareness. Now, complementing asanas, we have aerobic exercises also, jogging, swimming, brisk walking, tennis, etc. These strengthen the heart, lungs, the muscles. They help to burn calories. They reduce depression. And It should not be done in excess and not done for women during menstruation or in the last trimester of pregnancy. So having dealt with the body through cleansing and nourishing and exercising the body, we now come to the breath. We can live weeks without food, and days without water, but we can only live minutes without breathing. Maybe about 3 minutes. Of course, yogis can live longer, breath-free, but for most of us, we only have minutes. Breath is a vehicle for prana, and it's very important that we do not breathe with the chest, but breathe using the diaphragm. And diaphragmatic breathing changes the balance between sympathetic and parasympathetic nervous systems. It reduces the tone of the sympathetic and increases the parasympathetic tone, creating less anxiety, less tension. Anulom Vilom Pranayama, or called Nadi Shodhana, is also important. And one can clean the nasal passages with salt water called Jalaneti. The diaphragm, as you all know, is a very powerful muscle in the body. And when you do diaphragmatic breathing, you're completely filling all the lobes of the lungs. Whereas with chest breathing, only the upper lobes get filled with air and the lower lobes have stagnancy. So diaphragmatic breathing is a much better way of ventilating the lungs. In fact, even in the COVID setting now, people are using the prone position, what we call makarasan, in order to improve the ventilation of the COVID patient. So diaphragmatic breathing, not thoracic or clavicular breathing. Breathing should be deep within your capacity, smooth, quiet, and there should not be a long pause between inhalation and exhalation, as this will tend to destroy brain cells if you have a very long pause between. A conscious pause when you're doing pranayama, kumbhaka, that is different. We're talking about everyday breathing. This is makarasan, where you're in a prone position. Your chest is off the floor, your stomach is against the floor. You use your arms to raise the head. And this way you can learn diaphragmatic breathing, and then you can practice it in the corpse or shavasana. So breathing is very important. Now, how about personality? Now we're coming to the mind. The word personality means a mask. Persona means mask. Mask is made up of habits. Habits are repeated actions. Actions are related to our thinking. You cannot act without thinking. Thoughts come from our emotions. And emotions are things like kama, krodha, lobha, moha, mada, matsarya, ahankara. When desire springs up, desire, kama is the mother, and ahankara, ego, is the father. And when mother and father, desire and ego come together, they end up giving very ugly children. If the desire is not fulfilled, it gives anger. If it's fulfilled, you become proud. If you get very angry, you lose your viveka, your discrimination. If you're proud, you get attached to what has made you so great, so proud. When you lose your viveka, discrimination, you become a mental wreck. And attachment makes you greedy to get more and more and more. And you compare yourself with other people and you start becoming jealous. And this cycle can keep repeating. So we have to look at the source of our problems in the mind, in the manomaya kosha. And if we learn to recognize the problems at the manomaya level, then the pranamaya and annamaya koshas will be healthy. The mind is an obstacle for the ignorant, but can be a tool, instrument, a means for the wise, because they know the totality of the mind. Let us make some, the mind is not the brain. The brain is like a bulb in an electrical system. The nervous system is like the wiring, and the mind is like electricity. So the mind is really energy. It is not a physical entity. You cannot dissect the body and find the mind. You can find the brain, you can find the wiring, but not the energy. So the mind is really a mode of energy that makes the brain light up. What we call the mind, what we know as the mind, is only the tip of the iceberg. 90% of the iceberg is the unconscious mind, which is below the water. We are ignorant of our unconscious mind. We have no connection to the unconscious mind. And even the conscious mind, we only know to some extent. We don't even know all of our conscious mind. The vast part of the mind, according to Swami Rama, is unknown to you. Only a small part is cultivated by you. So all our degrees, our MBBS, MS, MD, MCH, all these are only cultivating a small part of the mind, which is the conscious mind. And even that is not fully under our control, because we have bad habits, addictions. So we can't even control our conscious minds fully. To really know peace of mind and achieve happiness, we have to understand the totality of mind. Mind belongs to you. You do not belong to the mind. For most of us, we belong to the mind. We belong to our habits, our addictions, our desires, our ego. So what do we mean by totality of mind? According to the yogic model of mind, there is Atma, which is the center of consciousness. Manas brings the inputs from the indriyas, the sensory inputs. Buddhi examines the inputs and makes decisions. In order to make a decision, Buddhi uses a storehouse or chitta. And all of this is related to the sense of ego, ahankara. For example, let's say you see a dark, big object a little distance from you. Manas says, at the 2 o'clock position, there's a big black object. Buddhi looks at the black object and recognizes from chitta that it's a bull, and a bull is a dangerous animal. A bull has got sharp horns. So Buddhi then gives the signal to the manas, start running as fast as you can, because ego says, I don't want to get hurt. So this is how the totality of mind works, the interplay of manas, buddhi, chitta, and ahankara. And all this takes place very quickly and very spontaneously. We are not even aware of it. So totality of mind means being aware of this continuum. So how do we achieve this? It is through meditation. Meditation is a special technique for resting the mind, to increase our well-being, to reduce our depression, to improve our immune system, to enhance peace of mind. It's a transformative process. A fool goes to sleep, but when he wakes up, he is still a fool. But if a fool could go into deep meditation, he would come out of meditation as a wise person, a sage. Because meditation gives you access to the infinite library of intuitive knowledge. One thing that amazed me about Swami Rama was, whenever I had questions and I sat with Swami Rama, he would start answering my questions before I could speak my questions. Because he could see through his intuition, he could connect his mind to my mind. And he would say, this is child's play, this is not a big deal for a yogi. For us, it's a big deal. But he was well aware of what was happening in your mind. In fact, when my wife was first introduced to Swami Rama, she was not very keen on meeting him, saying that if he can read my mind, there's a lot of garbage. I don't want to expose my garbage. But when she met him and saw what a loving, kind person he was, she was totally transformed by his love and compassion. Meditation is a very therapeutic, even if you don't worry about the spiritual aspect and only want it as a therapy, it reduces muscle tension. It resets your nervous system. Parasympathetic increases, sympathetic decreases. It reduces stress. It strengthens the immune system. I said Swami Rama used to sleep only 2.5 hours a day. So with more meditation, you need less sleep. And yet you're energized. And it's very effective for psychosomatic disorders. So how does one meditate? I'll do this very quickly. First, you have to learn to sit quietly without a lot of movement of the body in a comfortable and stable posture. In the sutras, 196 sutras of Patanjali, he only has one aspect of asana. He says it should be sthira and sukha, stable and comfortable, keeping head, neck, and trunk aligned. Just sitting can make you full of joy. Even if you sit for 10 minutes, you don't even meditate, but just sit still, you'll feel joy of mind. You cannot sit still if the mind is restless. So automatically when you start sitting quietly, your mind starts calming down. It's a restlessness that makes the body tense. And it works vice versa. If you make the body still, the body starts relaxing. But it has to be a regular daily practice, not once in a while. Once you learn to sit still with head, neck, and trunk aligned, you start attending to your breath. The 4 good habits of breathing: deep breathing, breathing without a long pause between inhalation and exhalation, smooth, continuous breathing, and quiet breathing. Let your mind flow with your breath. This is called breath awareness. And this will calm the mind, making it concentrated and one-pointed. When the mind starts to wander, and the mind will wander, don't fight with the mind. The mind is a monkey, not just an ordinary monkey. It's a monkey that's been drunk, given some liquor. And in its drunk state, it has been bitten by a scorpion. So if you think of a monkey bitten by a scorpion while drunk, you can see how restless it is. And that is how our minds are. We should not fight with the mind, but by working with the breath, we can start calming the mind. We have to be patient. You cannot achieve nirvana in one day. Maybe a Ramana Maharshi did, and the Buddha did in one night. But for many of us, it's a lifelong practice. Don't indulge in self-condemnation. If you cannot forgive yourself, you cannot forgive other people. So be practical, set realistic small goals, and don't feel guilty. So I come to the end of my slideshow. I thank you for a patient hearing.